It's with great pleasure I'd like to invite Ali Skeats to talk now from WildTeam UK. Ali's going to be talking about their online training for successful conservation projects. And I'd just like to repeat what I said earlier. I've been on two of these courses, and they're two of the best online courses that I've ever been on. The Project Management for Wildlife Conservation course is a core course that I think everybody, every single person working in the conservation sector should take so that we're all working from the same principles and thinking um, yeah, enabling us to work successfully together. So over to you, Ali.
Cool, thanks, Karen. Really nice to hear it kind of promoted at the beginning. Um, yeah, so our team, we're a UK charity and we work to empower conservationists essentially to protect and restore nature. Um, we do this by developing and teaching this suite of best practices, which Karen mentioned, including project management, project planning, monitoring and evaluation, stakeholder engagement, and grant writing. And we hope that all these courses sort of come together so that conservationists can do really effective work in standard procedures. So a bit about myself. I joined WildTeam in 2017 first, from a background of lab and field research. And at that point, WildTeam taught only in classrooms and in person. And we delivered all of these courses just over kind of 2 or 3 days. I left WildTeam in 2018 and went on to managing a rainforest conservation program. Eventually, I left that and came back to WildTeam. And in the time I've been away, WildTeam have moved on from delivering in classrooms to delivering solely online. And this was in order to have a really big global reach. They'd also developed 3 new best practices, and all these training materials for online delivery, but still allowing this kind of classroom feel for students. And this was a really big success. Um, it enabled WildTeam to reach more conservationists all around the world, while still having this kind of friendly and engaging classroom atmosphere. Um, since they started, or we started online training in 2019, we've trained over 2,000 conservationists from 733 organizations and 86 countries. So much bigger than we would have got if we just continued teaching face-to-face in classrooms. So I wish I'd been involved in converting these classroom materials into the online materials. It must have been super creative and no doubt challenging process. So I've chatted to my colleagues kind of in preparation from today so that I can share with you like a mix of our experiences in developing this training and delivering it. So I'll talk through challenges and adaptations, including the digital divide and overcoming screen fatigue to start with. Technology, like everyone's talked about this today, is this ongoing challenge when we're trying to deliver globally. For us, it ranges from internet and power cuts for students to getting the right platforms for our trainers to use, to managing screen time and well-being for students and teachers. So I'll start by talking about the digital divide. And this is really something globally that makes democratization of training really hard, with so much of the world not able to access sort of stable power or internet or owning the equipment that they need, like laptops. And it's the responsibility of kind of all of us as online trainers to try and narrow that divide. We do this by offering asynchronous learning, so kind of self-led paced and classroom feel, and downloadable content so people can study at their own pace. This is great for people with kind of poor internet, so they can continue to learn when they're offline. We've talked today about like different apps and platforms that different trainers use online, and we try and use ones which are mobile phone friendly, for people who are not working on laptops, including Zoom and Google Drive. And a bit like Dan mentioned, we also provide these sort of quick how-to reference sheets for people to learn to use platforms which are less familiar to them. We record our live sessions, and this allows people whose internet cuts out to watch it afterwards. And these vocational kind of conservation project management skills that we teach, in this way, they can reach people everywhere. And the other tech challenge I wanted to talk about was screen fatigue. And maybe this affects us more in these countries where we have really perfect internet. And it definitely affects learners and trainers. So as a learner, it's more emails to keep up with, more platforms than you might usually use. And I think any of us who've joined an online course and had to use new technology, you know, it can be hard to keep up and remember to check updates. I've listed this as a challenge, and I'm not really sure how we address screen fatigue. Perhaps we have to accept it as a trade-off for being able to teach people all over the world. We take a few measures to try and break our material up into time away from the screen, or different times on the screen. So we have videos, reading, and exercises. We encourage people to do exercises in notebooks as well. Obviously, we can't mark those exercises, but encourages people to get thinking and get away from their screens. We do use a platform which tends to be unfamiliar to our learners. And this is our kind of social media platform. It's called WildHub. And we use this to try and encourage discussion, because this discussion and networking fosters a kind of sense of community. And that's so essential in the conservation context, in order to get this holistic approach to conservation of wildlife and landscapes. I think it's also an important thing to have in online training, to encourage people to take what they've learned away from the screen, and make collaborations that they can work on together, maybe on similar projects, and really apply those vocational skills that we've taught them. Screen fatigue and trainers. So I certainly get screen fatigue. Sometimes we have to deliver sessions that are 2 hours long, but we're online for longer. We have to sit still. There's a lot of background admin to balance while you're presenting. I know other people have mentioned that. And it's tiring. You also have to stay enthusiastic while you're delivering stuff that you know really well. For me, I think I keep engaged. I keep my engagement from having the trainees. Their input and their questions and their discussion firstly allows me to shape the material as I go along, so it's interesting to them. But the learning that I get from those conservationists, hearing about their projects and their species, really motivates me and helps with that screen fatigue. When WildTeam recruit, we also think about this. We hold all of our interviews virtually, and this allows us to gauge the kind of online presence of candidates and make a judgment of how they would bring energy to the live sessions, and also how they're going to manage their own energy and protect their well-being. And part of that energy is what we need for success in our virtual classroom. We need this energy when we're looking at a screen in the same way that we do in a face-to-face classroom. And I think sometimes it's hard to imagine conservation in a virtual world. You're not outdoors, you're not meeting your students, but delivering this training is essential. Vocational training in the conservation sector does tend to be lacking. It's not really taught at universities, and research that we've read and surveys that we've done indicate that a lot of conservationists want these skills, such as project management, planning, and monitoring and evaluation. Globally, these skills are needed to make conservation effective, and they need to be accessed by conservationists regardless of where they live. And this is why online delivery is really critical in this sector. So when I came back to our team after my years away, I really saw how their global reach has expanded. Partly, I think that's due to a bursary scheme which we introduced, which removed the barrier of cost. But it's hugely due to our shift into online training. So before I was teaching people in the UK, now I'm teaching people still from the UK, but also from Kenya, Ukraine, Indonesia, the United States, everywhere across the world. And as a charity whose objective is wildlife conservation, we are having a greater indirect impact now on wildlife conservation by empowering local people to do really good conservation projects. So the other thing I saw when I came back, going back to the virtual classroom, is how my colleagues had done this amazing job of creating an interactive classroom feel to an online course. I don't think this was easy, but I think WildTeam made a massive achievement to engage people in participating in a virtual classroom. So the aim in creating a virtual classroom was to try and recreate that interactive feeling of in-person training instead of delivering a passive or lecture style session. This required spending time breaking down our material into learning hours and really carving up into weekly bite-sized videos and thinking about what would go down well in a live session versus what would go down well being self-paced and learnt in the student's own time. Classroom sessions were really adapted to suit online work while keeping group work going. And in the early days, we asked for feedback a lot as we went along and adapted that material in response to what students said. This is an ongoing process, and every course that myself and the rest of the training team deliver, we make little tweaks in response to the students in order to keep these virtual sessions engaging and an important component of people's learning. We need them to be engaging because we need people to complete the courses so they can use these approaches to support their conservation work. There's a huge purpose at the end of this, which is improved wildlife conservation projects through standardized monitoring and evaluation and management of the projects. So engagement in online courses is really hard to achieve. Everyone has a preferred way to learn and different personal lives and different work lives, which get in the way and interfere with how we interact with online work. There's definitely courses I've started in the past that I probably quit because I've not been kept engaged. And I think what WildTeam have done, and it's recognised in the sector, is to use different learning methods and have a range of learning styles for people. I like to learn by doing. Someone said earlier they love a diagram. I also learn by reading, but if you tell me what to do in more than a few sentences, I will forget it. So we've worked hard in WildTeam, as I'm sure all online courses have done, to address all of the classic styles of learning with a variety of materials. So videos, reading, writing, written exercises, design exercises. And engagement in live sessions, we get this by starting early. And we start early and, some people turn up really early, some people turn up a little bit late. But by starting early, we warm people up with a chat. We ask them questions and get them used to speaking on Zoom. This allows for more interaction later on. And then we do the mixed media exercises as well. Quizzes, polls, anonymous polls some of the time so people don't feel sort of judged in that virtual classroom. And we try and keep as much variety as possible. what else was I going yeah, I was going to say about allowing material to be done at learners' own pace is also something that helps with engagement. This is outside of the virtual classroom, really. We guide the course over our time scale, but we allow people to learn week by week at times that suit them. But we still want to keep the cohorts in sync for the live sessions so we can bounce ideas off each other. We've done this by breaking it into weekly materials, but we do still have deadlines because we found this gives structure to learners and sometimes it gives motivation that they need. Occasionally people can't do things in time and that's fine. Because we're online, we can offer flexibility and allow people to do it in their own time if they need to. So online training, networking, sorry, is so important in the conservation sector. We need these conservation networks to be built in order for conservation to be a global effort. Networking can be hard to get online, and learners' engagement really comes from positive interactions with other conservationists. So we use Zoom breakout rooms for this. The trainers are not in the rooms, and I think this makes a huge difference. Only the learners are in there, and I've noticed how sometimes people are really quiet in the main room, but in the small rooms, they're just chatting away when the instructor's not in there. In these rooms, they also get experience of looking at examples from other people. They like to look at other people's answers to our exercises and look at other people's classroom worksheets so they can learn from this. There's also a really nice thing in this for trainers, which is that the students peer review each other's work. And this gives me and the other trainers a little bit of a break as well. The other networking thing I mentioned earlier was Wild Hub, and I refer to it as our social media platform. It's a member-led platform for conservationists everywhere. And for every class that we teach, we set up a private page, and it's a safe space really to share materials and ask questions outside of the live sessions. And when the course is over, a lot of our students go on to join the wider Wild Hub community to build their network with non-learners and professionals, as in this private platform where conservationists can share articles or seek advice. And the last thing I wanted to mention about the virtual classroom, which I guess came unexpectedly, was empathy. And I heard this from one of my colleagues, a fellow trainer, who said they had feedback from the learners that by allowing learners to chat to people from all over the world, they got different perspectives and broadened their horizons on conservation. The example I was given was how conservationists from the global north tend to say things like, it's terrible what loggers are doing. I'm not saying that we all say this. But when those learners and people who possibly are on the edge of that worldview speak to people working on more diverse projects from different cultures, then those opinions get challenged. And this will help engage stakeholders in their own projects and challenge these stereotypes that do linger from colonial conservation strategies in the past. This, I think, is a massive benefit of online training and online classrooms, because those conversations probably wouldn't happen in a real classroom. It would be far too expensive and far too carbon intensive to get all those people from all those cultures into one room. But we need this empathy. It's really important for getting conservation right for people and right for the environment, and it promotes conservation justice. So moving on to what the future holds, I've got a few minutes, try and do it quickly. The future, I was going to talk briefly about AI, and also go full circle and talk about going back offline. I think online training is increasing in every sector. People are becoming more and more familiar with the tech, such as Zoom. Zoom was a challenge in 2019 for our learners, but now everybody on the courses is using the chat boxes, the hand up function, everything that's become pretty normal now. So AI, we offer this blend of synchronous and asynchronous learning, which I mentioned earlier. And I think it's really hard to know what the future of AI is, but it probably offers a lot more personalization of courses, and might help reach people with neurodivergency. So we do try and ask students about their specific learning needs, and we get requests related to things like text color, language, timing, group work dynamics. And unfortunately, we're not able to personalize the material to facilitate learning for everyone. But I think future adaptive learning platforms could work well to adjust content based on individual student preferences, and give them real-time feedback and support as they go through courses. So going right back to the start, I just talked about AI, and AI advances will not be equal across the world. So that's coming right back to this issue of digital divide, which we can't get away with when we're trying to teach conservation to global people. We do believe that people living closest to the conservation situation are the ones best placed to run effective conservation projects. So they're the ones that need these skills to plan, run, and manage projects. So, and they also have the biggest limitations in tech. So our solution to this is actually to move partly back to classroom and face-to-face teaching. But this time it's not going to be me and my team doing the teaching. In our newest project, we intend to build a conservation trainers network in which we're going to upskill others to deliver our courses in whatever part of the world they're in. To do this, we're now backward converting our training materials from online versions into versions that can be used in classrooms, suitable for students with computers or students without, exercises that can be done on paper or on a blackboard or a flip chart. And we're aiming to make these materials freely available to anyone, anywhere who wants to teach our best practices. So it's a train the trainer model, but we want to be more than just a standard train the trainer approach. So we're making this network where there'll be a huge focus on peer support and support from WildTeam trainers to allow every member of the network to become a really good trainer. And I think with this face-to-face training, which will be happening hopefully all over the world, and our online training, then sort of working together as part of this network, we can deliver effective training for people to deliver effective conservation projects everywhere. So that's it. Hopefully that's within time, slightly rushed through. But thank you for listening. And yeah, thanks whoever was popping up all our links in the chat box. Really